Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. Today in this video we will be looking at the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions. So let's get started. Let's first understand the hierarchy and then differentiating between both of them will be much more simpler to us. Throwable is the parent class of all the kinds of exceptions or errors that we face during the development. Now what we will be considering today is only this part, exceptions part, and not the error part. Error are those which happens without our intentional or unintentional mistakes. For example, Stack Overflow. We cannot do anything, it was the hardware issue, or out of memory error. So the memory is full. We cannot do anything in such kind of errors, and this does not occur because of our program. So these are not in our control. What we are going to look at is exceptions which is completely on our control and is because of us only. Exceptions are basically of two types, checked and unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions are in direct hierarchy to exception. So there is no intermediate class called as compile time or checked exception. File not found is an exception, IO is an exception, SQL is an exception. So parent of all such compile time or checked exceptions are exceptions, while there is a subclass of exception called as runtime exception or unchecked exceptions, where the explicit class name is runtime exception.java, which has the runtime exceptions for us like arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array out of bound exceptions. These exceptions occurs at runtime, these exception occurs at compile time itself and checked by compiler. This is not checked by compiler. So let's go ahead and see the differences first. What is the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions? So checked exceptions are also called as compile time exceptions because they are checked by compiler at the compile time. While unchecked exceptions are not checked by compiler, hence these are called as runtime exceptions. When do they occur? The checked exceptions occurs at compile time, unchecked exception occurs at runtime. So there is .java file. When it is compiled to .class so that the bytecode is created and that bytecode is completely machine independent, can be run on any JVM. That time during the compilation, when Java compiler comes into picture, then only this checked exceptions are checked by the compiler. While in case of unchecked exceptions, compiler happily ignore these exceptions and these occurs when you run those bytecodes in your machine. Who handles the checked exceptions? Compiler handles the checked exceptions, while unchecked exceptions cannot be catched or handled at the time of compilation because they get generated by our mistakes in the program. Next is handling. Handling must be done with the try-catch block for the checked exceptions, or else it should be thrown. So I'll show the example first. So this is a runtime exception example. This, if you can see, this is 5 divided by 0. This is arithmetic exception for us. If I try to debug this at line number 7 and execute line number 7, then you will see a divide by 0 exception, which is an arithmetic exception. And if you can see, the compilation error is not there, but this is a compile time or checked exception. So even before you are able to run, your compiler throws an exception saying, see what is an exception? Unhandled exception, file not found exception. So either you have to use throws like this, that this function is going to throw a file not found exception, or else at least you are expected to surround it with the try catch. So try says if anything happens wrong during reading or IO of the file, then you are going to catch it and handle the situation. If file is not found, what is the second plan or plan B for you if the file is not found? So this is where compiler comes into picture. So now with try and catch or with throws, your class compiles successfully. Either the throws or the try catch is must for your checked exception. If I remove throws and do not use try catch, then compiler will not compile it. So either the throws or the try catch is compulsory for your checked exceptions, and nothing is as such required for unchecked exceptions. Your arithmetic exception, this arithmetic exception, nothing is required. No try, no catch, no throws. So handling should be done by you at the compile time, else compiler will give you an exception. And for unchecked error exception handling like try catch throws are not required with unchecked exception. Your code will compile successfully. Then force, yes, Java compiler force you to handle checked exceptions with throws, try and catch, but unchecked exception, JVM will not force you to use any such error handling semantics. Hierarchy, this is very important where most of the people go wrong. They think either there is a checked exception and which is a child of exception, which is not the case. There is no checked exception, but there is a runtime exception as a class here, which is a parent to all such exceptions. So all such runtime exceptions are clubbed as together as runtime exceptions, children. So there is a parent called as runtime exception. I can show that to you. If you can see, runtime exceptions is an exception which extends exception. So here we prove that runtime exceptions is a child of exception here. While when it comes to IO or find not found exception, IO exception is directly extending an exception. So this IO exception is directly a part of exception and is not a part of any checked or compile time exception base class. So hierarchy is, these all checked exceptions are the direct children of exception, while all these subclasses are the children of runtime exception.java class and not a direct children of exception class. Scenario, this is very important. The checked exceptions occurs where there is a higher failure rate. So the chances that you will not be able to find your file, say some text.txt does not actually exist in my system. This is directly just the checked exception demo and there is no such some file.txt in my whole path. So for sure this is going to break for you. So this is a high failure scenario, and hence because it's a high failure rate scenario, compiler says there are very high rate that you might not find the file there. If you do not find a file there, what is your plan B? What should you do? And hence it expects you to put try, catch and throws and handle such scenario. While in case of unchecked or runtime exceptions, these are mostly our programmatical mistakes which compiler cannot find out, and hence it leaves it on you. Whenever it goes wrong, then fix it and go ahead. Now throws clause is must with checked exception if you are not using try catch. So if you are using try catch, in throws is not required. So here if you either use a try catch, throws is not required. If you do not use a try catch, throws is required. While in unchecked exception, throws is not at all required. There is no if, but and then, not required. Simple. Now ending this video with the examples. Checked exceptions, what I have shown you is a find not found exception, and unchecked that I have shown you is arithmetic exceptions. More such examples is no such field exception, interrupt exception, no such method exception, class not found exception. And unchecked exceptions are no such element exception, undeclared throwable exception, stack empty, null pointer, array index out of bounds. So these are all unchecked exceptions. You cannot do anything. If this occurs, your system either will terminate, or if you think that this can happen, you do explicitly put try catch. It is just you and you who can prevent these exceptions. Like you can prevent null pointer using optional in Java 8. So that is how you should be good enough to find a situation that this can occur, and hence I can use try catch before that only. So that was all about checked and unchecked exception. If you know this already, great, because I have seen even people with 12 to 13 years of experience also who do not understand these simple concepts. They come to me and say there's no compile time exception terminology. So if you know all these in advance, it's great. If not, just remember this hierarchy. It will be easy for you to segregate between the checked and unchecked or compile time or runtime exceptions. If you want to know more such videos on exceptions, just let me know in the comment section. I'll put more such videos. Thank you.